And at this time, it is my pleasure to invite up our guest, Rabbi Ariel Yaakov Dunat, to give our Devar Torah this morning.
All right, we'll do a quick mic check. Is it working for everyone?
Yes.
All right, if at any point I do start to simmer down, just raise your hand and let me know. So this past Sunday, I went to the Renaissance Fair with my husband, Jason, and some friends. And the opportunity to fulfill a not-so-common mitzvah presented itself. This week, we did not read it this morning, but this week in our parsha, it contains more mitzvot than any other parsha in the whole Torah. 74 mitzvot to be exact, I did not count. Or 12% of all of the mitzvot in the entire Torah. Among them are the laws for relating to prisoners of war, inheritance rights, the stubborn and rebellious child, returning the lost object, and what became relevant for me, shatnez. Yes, I'm talking about shatnez. A forbidden mixture of wool and linen in a garment. So at the fair, we were exploring the shops, and I saw a rain cloak that caught my eye. And as someone who walks on Shabbos, I'm always in the market for a good rain gear, as we are seeing today. So I stopped to take a look. I realized very quickly that this cloak was made out of wool, and so I inquired from the owner if it was a mixture, which it was, and as luck would have it, it was a linen and wool mixture specifically, the very type prohibited by the Torah this week. The Torah teaches, "Lo tilbash shatnez zemer ufishtim yachdav." Do not wear cloth combining wool and linen. And so I thanked the owner and continued to explore elsewhere. But why is shatnez forbidden? Why does God care what types of fabrics our clothing are made from? And what can we learn from this mixed fabric? First, let's understand exactly what this mixture really is, because in frankness, I did not many years ago. Wool, I think we understand. It is the fur of animals like sheep, goats, camels, rabbits, llamas, all those things. And it is great at retaining heat and absorbing moisture. Linen, in full transparency, is not something I really understood until I got to college. Linen is made from the fibers of flax, a plant, and it is known for its breathability. It is especially common in areas that see a lot of heat, such as the Middle East. So, why does God prohibit us from wearing clothing made from these mixed fibers? Today, we will look at two possible answers to this question. The first is from Rabbi Hezkiah ben Manoah, a 13th century French rabbi, commonly known as Chizkuni. He wrote in his commentary on this verse that the reason these two fabrics are forbidden to be mixed is because of two brothers, Cain and Abel. Back in Genesis, these sons of Adam and Eve bring offerings before Hashem, before God. Cain brings the fruit of the earth, understood by the rabbis to be flax, and Abel brings an offering from among his flock. God accepts Abel's offering, but pays no heed to that of Cain. That's another Devar Torah. What ensues, though, is one of the most infamous accounts in the whole Torah. The first time a human being kills another. Cain, as a result, is cursed to wander to earth, never finding peace. From this account, Chizkuni draws his understanding for the prohibition of mixing wool and linen. In this understanding, mixing wool and linen would hearken back to that first violent act. For Chizkuni, such a mixture demonstrates nothing but the baseless hatred and violence of that act. So the prohibition of shatnez is, in effect, a reminder against hatred and violence. Our second source comes from a collection of commentaries written in the 12th and 13th centuries by various French and German rabbis, the Dat Zekinim, or the knowledge of the elders. They take a different approach entirely in explaining this mitzvah. They teach, לפי שהפרוכת נעשה, זה מאופשתים יחדיו, ולא רצה הקדוש ברוך הוא שיעשו בניו דוגמתו. Because the curtain, the parochet, was made from wool and linen together, and the Holy Blessed One did not want their children to make an example of it. Dat Zekenim compares Shatnez to the Parochet, the curtain that stood before the Ark of the Covenant in the Holy of Holies. Rather than compare this wool-linen mixture to something as horrible as the story of Cain and Abel, the elders compare it to something entirely holy. They explain that the reason we cannot wear shatnez is because the parochet, the curtain itself, was made from this very mixture of fabrics. That because this mixture was used for such a holy purpose, we could not use it mundanely. And the elders had what to connect this idea to. Also in the temple, the Kohanim, the priests, wore garments of mixed wool and linen, but only at certain times of increased holiness. And while we no longer have a temple, nor a parochet, we do have one behind us, but not the same one, or these special priestly garments, there's still one exception to this prohibition of mixing wool and linen. Tzitzit. Specifically, tzitzit on a linen garment, so if you have a talis made out of linen, and when you wear techelet, the special thread of blue that we reference in the Shema. So linen, for all of its benefits, being breathable, being good for heat, does not absorb dye all that well. And so if one were to dye linen tzitzit, this blue techelet color, it wouldn't work out that well. Techelet only really takes to woolen tzitzit. And so, if one has a linen talit, a linen talis, and wears techelet, aka wool tzitzit, this is the only case in which you can wear shatnez in our day. So, we have seen so far two very different reasons given for the prohibition on wearing shatnez. First, that this mixture reminds us of the violence between two brothers. And second, that this mixture is only meant to be used in very specific situations of holiness. So in essence, our two answers are opposites: holiness and profanity. I believe that this can teach us a great deal about the mitzvot and their reasons. For many mitzvot, the Torah simply does not give us a reason why. And indeed, for mitzvot like shatnez, the rabbis explain that these are what they call a category of chukim, essentially decrees of the sovereign. Decrees that, while God may have a deeper message and meaning in their mind, ultimately we can't understand that. So, in effect, these mitzvot simply have no ascertainable reason. They go beyond the rationale, and they are observed simply because of our relationship with God. Similar to how our relationships with friends, families, and loved ones are filled with nuance and ways of interacting that aren't always logical, but out of love and the desire for a relationship, we accept nonetheless. So to answer our question of why does God care? In full honesty, I don't entirely know that they do care or how much. What I believe is important to God is that we actively engage in these relationships, that we try to integrate the mitzvot into our lives and find ways to bring holiness into the world. That even in the most mundane moments, me shopping around a Renaissance fair, for example, we can find ways to engage with the mitzvot and with God. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Yay.